And CNET is all ready. I'll go ahead and call to order the Board of Supervisors regular meeting for Tuesday, March 19th, 2024. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and we'll go to the manager for announcements and a roll call.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the board, staff, and the public for joining us this evening for the March 19th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been publicly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and here in person in the main meeting room. If you are in attendance virtually using the WebEx platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium and state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public attending using the WebEx platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. And secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the WebEx meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Patterson?
Here.
Mr. Heller?
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. So no proclamations this evening, so we'll move to public input, and this is an opportunity for anyone to present comments on any item not on tonight's agenda. And seeing none, we will move to approval of the minutes. And this is the minutes from the March 5th meeting. Were there some corrections or changes to be made? If somebody had, yes.
Yes, Madam Chair, just a few items that I noticed. On section, 4.1c, just wanted to maybe update to, we discussed priorities, but it was budgeting priorities in that particular section. Section
So adding the word budget.
budgeting,
Okay,
yeah, budgeting priorities.
Sure.
I think it's 6.1d. There was, it looked like a copy paste error where in E it had the, so when you
The
move
same
that up,
motion, yes,
and
that-
then it's
yes.
the same motion twice, and then in the item E, that's where there was a 4-1 vote, and just make sure that was
Yeah.
clean there. And then in section 5, it said Harpster, and it should have been Harner. It was Dan Harner that stood up and spoke there. And then item, the second is young lady, Janine. I don't.
Ms. Boudreaux, yes.
Yeah, Ms. Boudreaux, I don't recall her saying that she couldn't get a credit, or I thought she was just talking about she felt like she was double paying, and so I wanted to correct the record there for whoever took that note.
Okay.
Those are the items that I had.
Okay, so we can just strike that comment and ask the recording secretary if there was something else to add there. Okay. Anything else? If there's nothing else, would someone like to make a motion to approve with those changes?
Liz Amari, so moved.
This is Go for it.
This is Patty, and I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Thanks for that. Okay, up next we have the authorities, boards, and commissions reports, and this evening we have the University Area Joint Authority report with Mr. Mark Kunkel.
Good evening, board members. I've provided to you a memorandum and a report for this evening's meeting, so I'm not going to discuss all of that, but I wanted to highlight a couple of things that are important, I think, that the board should be aware of. First is that a local project here, the Scott Road Pump Station, which has been a project that the authority's been working on for almost a year now, has been completed. So the capacity of the pump station there is sufficient to handle future development as well as the new development here at the Harner Farm on Appleview. Secondly, a major project that the board should be aware of is the anaerobic digester and sludge dryer. This project is going to replace the composting facility at the authority. And so the composting process is going to be shut down while this project is underway. This is probably a 2-year construction. And so sludge this week, I believe, early next week, will begin to be hauled from site rather than being composted on site. This is a $73 million project. The authority is funding this locally with an $80 million bond issue that the board has authorized at its previous meeting. You're probably wondering why there was about $7 million of extra being borrowed. We're in the process of also purchasing the first solar array. That's about a $3 million project to acquire that solar array. There were 2 phases to the solar array, so the first one came up for purchase, and we're in the process of doing that. And then there's always some additional bond money available for construction projects that will be in the pipeline. I want to highlight topic number 5, the rate dispute with State College Borough. We're going to be meeting tomorrow afternoon, and I know my report, when it was written, indicated that the borough currently owes the UAJ about $2.4 million. It's almost $2.6 million on our latest report. So the withholding of this payment has been a factor in the sewage treatment rate increases for all non-borough residents and customers in the 2023 and 2024 fiscal years. So we're not at a point yet to resolve that. Obviously, we're in negotiations and discussions with them to try to come to a result, but if not, the courts will come up with a solution to the reasonableness and uniformity issue that the authority members are trying to achieve with a rate basis for the borough. I mentioned the solar array purchase, and just one thing that is not on your report that I think is of interest is the authority is in the midst of a rate study. The authority's been in existence for 50 years or more and has always used a rate methodology using equivalent dwelling units based on 175 gallons of water per day from an equivalent dwelling unit. And there's a EDU table that has been in use for some time that transfers the EDUs for non-residential, industrial, multifamily units that is used in establishing the rate that's charged to the customer. This year, we've engaged the firm of Raftellus. They're out of Connecticut, and they're evaluating options for the billing to include both volumetric, potentially a hybrid that'll have both volumetric and EDU, as well as using the current methodology with an update or review of the equivalent dwelling unit table that has been in existence and used for about 50 years. Whatever is the option that's recommended by the consultant has to be both feasible to be implemented, since we have multiple water authorities on a volumetric basis. We'd have multiple water authorities involved to be able to provide data on volume used by those those customers. And it has to be fiscally stable and reliable. We have to know that funds coming into the authority are sufficient to operate the plant. So with that, that concludes my report, and if there are any questions the board members have, I'll be willing to either try to answer them or take them back to a meeting for tomorrow.
All right, thank you. Okay, questions for Mr. Kunkel? Not seeing any.
I want to go off report for just a moment. I've had several kind of community outreach on workforce housing. And so a thing that kind of came up most recently was as the township looks more into kind of updating the ordinance, that we look at other ways where other organizations can participate in that ordinance. And so example would be, a 20-unit development township's got a 10% requirement that on those 2 units, that other organizations look to kind of contribute. And so USER being on that authority, is there some opportunity for UAJA to decrease their fees on those 2 units, to help out in this kind of, goal of increasing workforce housing in the township. So that is a kind of off script, if you will, to, kind of bring back to the board and see what they think of something like that.
Sure. I think that's been an ongoing dialogue or request by the developers for a number of years, and certainly something worth considering.
Thank you, sir. Kind of none of my business, just as a Ferguson Township resident, but, it does impact, folks with this rate increase. And is there any movement from the borough, or is there anything that we can do to help with that, or, talk to other borough council members? Any recommendations there, sir?
I don't really have any answer to that, whether or not that's a discussion you may have offline with your fellow elected officials. Is something that sometimes is helpful. But I think we're looking at trying to be in compliance with the Municipal Authorities Act, which requires a uniform and reasonable rate for all customers. And so having disparate ways of billing for the same sewer service is not really in compliance with the Municipal Authorities Act. And so we're trying to bring that into compliance, and we're working through that process now with borough representatives.
Copy. And then on any of the other kind of issues in your report, any ways that the board here can help?
Appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, anything else? Thanks very much. Thanks for the very thorough report included in the agenda, too. That's very helpful. All right, okay, we will move on to special reports and acknowledgements. Under Diversity, Equity, and Inclusionary Activities and Acknowledgements, this month is Women's History Month, Greek American Heritage Month, Irish American Heritage Month, and Agriculture Month. And we will move to COG and Regional Committee reports. Looks like Human Resources was canceled, and the Lucy Committee was canceled. I have nothing to comment on that. Anything on Human Resources?
Just on Human Resources to update, staff had been working on developing the job description and policies with legal counsel on the fire inspector and firefighter positions. Due to some concerns that have been raised, COG staff was to meet with municipal managers to discuss those concerns, and just want to make sure, since this is these are very unique positions, that we're thorough in bringing them to fruition. So right now, there had been a timeline to have these filled by April 1st, but that's not on track to happen at this point. So more to come.
Thanks for that update. Yeah, I think we said earlier, it seems like that would make sense to kind of pursue as the new executive director comes in
And yes.
there's a lot going on. So pacing that, I think, is smart. Okay, all right, thank you. We'll go to the Climate Action and Sustainability Committee report with Matt.
Yeah, so a couple highlights there. I think the one that's going to be most impactful is, or folks will be most aware of, is the change to the refuse and recycling, et cetera. So long story short, and I have in my report a couple of key observations. So again, this is for our constituents and others to hear too, that we are going to be going with, it looks like we anticipate going with Bergmeyer's hauling instead of waste management. So with that in mind, I think one of the couple things that we're going to notice is there is going to be a rate increase only because, you know, that is what happens over time, and the cost to taking care of refuse has gone up considerably over the past couple of years. So there is going to be an increase to service. We are moving, of course, to a more to a cart system. So automated pickup where a trash, you know, a truck pulls up and it has an arm that comes out and dumps your receptacle in, et cetera. You'll be given receptacles. There's specifics on that I won't get into here. And the big thing for folks to hear is that after 32 years, bulk pickup will not be happening as we know it today. Twice a year, put anything on the curb, go ahead and, you know, it'll be picked up. Essentially, it's moving to a model where twice a year you can call in, and I hope I'm saying this correctly, I believe I am. Twice a year you can call it in, and they can come out and they will pick up 2 bulk items from you twice a year. So you have the opportunity to throw within a calendar year, essentially 4 bulk items away. No longer just put it out to the curb, et cetera. So that is changing. Those are, I would say, the highlights from that meeting. Happy to answer any questions about other things that were covered or discussed there.
Thanks. Questions? Yes, Ted.
You and I talked about that a little bit. If they do put together some sort of a one-pager to explain the bulk item things, I would love to have copies of that for our block party.
That sounds great. Yes, thank you, Patty. That is part of the request, is that, as well as why we could not, essentially cost prohibitive, nobody was going to bid on a contract where they would do the standard type of bulk pickup anymore. It just does not truly exist, and nobody's doing it. And it's been 32 years, so it's not, sadly, it's been something we've been, you know, grown accustomed to, but just can't be done right now.
Right.
Yeah.
I had saw somewhere there would be maybe pickup on private lanes, but I'm thinking back to a communication that we had from the board to the board. Particular resident, there was like,
Yep.
basically their sidewalk and then like a slope right out alongside where they would normally put their trash, but it's kind of cumbersome to get your trash there because you have to lug it up that incline, and then I think you have to place it basically on the road because there's no way a bin's gonna, but not to get carried away here, would this maybe, if I read this right, would this maybe qualify for an at-door service, considering their door is maybe only like 6 feet from the road?
I understand from Bergmeyer's that they will be looking at customers that have those sorts of issues and speaking with them directly. So if there is a kind of a time to cure after they have the contract awarded and start collecting, to say, wait a second, hold on, we used to get the pickup maybe in the back or on an alley. We'd still like it to be there, not in the front, et cetera, and they can hopefully work with residents to resolve that. And if I recall from that resident in particular, there was also an issue with the bulk pickup specifically. So this is all changing for that resident in respect to that.
And you're spot on with the bulk pickup. As a matter of fact, the way it had been done, it's kind of very ineffective anymore for a trash hauler to bring in several staff, pair them up in hotel rooms for a week, and then just basically run every mile of that route picking up stuff. So this on-demand system is more, I think it's going to be a lot more efficient.
Absolutely, and that was something that I had learned as part of the committee too.
how many people they have to bring in. They have to put them up in hotels. They have to bring in extra trucks that are not local. And you go, wow, okay, that's a significant cost. I hear you. So, yeah, it was different. A little bit of an eye-opener.
Amari, anything?
No, ma'am.
Yeah, my only comments, well, of course, on bulk waste, so that's, that's too bad to see that go. But understanding the cost and complexity with that. So I guess the lingering concern there is that it's going to be 4 items total in the year. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Was there some discussion about that?
I understood that that was all negotiated prior to the RFP and
Okay.
everything going out. So this was maybe in a refuse and recycling meeting or a meeting,
Okay.
last year. But what I understand too is this does not include those recyclable items. Like a stove, I believe, is recyclable. So that goes into now the Center County Refuse and Recycling, which is a different number you can call. So there is going to have to be a learning curve, but I don't believe it includes things like stoves, et cetera. So that would be separate.
So
So
stoves are excluded.
Yeah.
So, because the hauler does a subcontract with Center County Refuse for recycling, is that?
in this case, we would be contracting with Berg Myers for the refuse, and the recycling would be done through Center County Refuse and Recycling. So the recycling would still be handled differently. In other words, the way I kind of think about it is you can put out 4 couches a year. You can call twice and get 2 couches picked up.
Yeah.
You can call twice and get 2 other couches picked up. But if you have a stove that's out there, then you call Center County Refuse and Recycling. They say, oh, we recycle that. That goes this way.
Yeah.
And they handle it differently. So
Okay.
there's a lot that we have to understand in the one
So there's
pager.
changes to recycling too, is what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's, okay, I hadn't heard that before, so that's interesting. Because I was wondering, go ahead, Betsy.
Well, I was just gonna say, in the current contract, you are right. When they do the bulk pickup, they are required for anything that is recyclable to segregate that, and it does go to Center County Refuse. So that was an added requirement that we have in the current contract. So not only do they have to bring in extra people, run the routes with people who don't know where they're going, because they just don't do it regularly, but then they also had to do the separation and return to Center
Yeah.
County, to the recycling authority. I mean, they're
Yeah.
taking it all to our facility anyways, but they have to separate it.
Right.
So
right.
what I think I heard at the meeting, Matt, but I also
Probably.
heard from, in a later conversation with the recycling, or the refuse coordinator, is that they will be, Center County Refuse and Recycling Authority will also be doing their own PR as to how you can get recyclable products like stoves and so forth picked up by them. It's still not clear to me that there won't be a fee for that, but, I mean, at the end of the day, the problem in the recycling world, which many of you know, is that it's really a matter of whether they can get the funds out of whatever the recycled piece is to justify the pickup and everything.
Got
But
it,
I think
thank
they'll be
you.
helping us with that.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, because earlier it had sounded like it was going more toward the riffraff model in the borough. I don't know if there's a limitation on that, if you can only call so many times. But I didn't think that there was, so that's, anyway, so that's, it's too bad, but understood. But maybe that's something else to look at, I guess particularly in our Ward 1 area, that, and that was the other question I was gonna ask, that Jeremy kind of brought up, was we had some issues with some Pine Grove Mills residents who had come in with their pickup, and maybe this was last year, some may recall. And I think there were some alley issues, and so you think that's gonna be, that's already been addressed to the,
I don't believe they've been addressed fully. I think they're open to what should we adjust as we learn the routes from waste management and everything else, and have customers call in during that time to make some adjustments. But it sounds like, and I did have some conversation with the owner of Bergmeyer, that they are willing and interested because they are local. This is their community, to do what they need to do to go ahead and ensure the highest level of customer service. So I felt good about having an initial conversation there, and I would hope that we see that action when they start. And I will say, I think this conversation here too highlights how confusing this is. If it's confusing to us, it's going to be confusing to somebody, our constituents that are saying, I don't even know what I can put out anymore. Where does this go? Where does that? We really have to say, as I told the committee here 2 weeks ago, the committee here at COG, that, look, where the rubber hits the road, people need to hear this and understand how it's going to impact them. And right now, there hasn't been anything because we haven't got to the contract, but now what is the plan for communicating the PR and everything else associated with that? That's where the focus has to be now, because things are going to be changing.
And will the hauler help with that communication, or?
I didn't get
Okay.
specifics on that.
Okay.
you know.
And when is the change going to happen?
Oh, the contract is for 2025?
April, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, all right, well, thank you. Yes.
Just to clarify, my understanding, Center County Refuse and Recycling will be taking care of the customer service aspect.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
should anyone have questions, concerns, they would contact them. So they're not necessarily contacting two separate entities. Also, I would add, from my time on the committee, looking at this RFP, one thing that we were trying to address with the bulk pickup was defining what is the routine twice-a-year bulk pickup versus maybe something that warrants more extra dumpster service, because it does create a lot of expense to have that feature in there. So like 2 couches, twice a year, bulk pickup, that's fine. Whole home kitchen renovation, you can get that picked up, but you're gonna have to discuss dumpster service, which would be an added fee. It's not something that we can all share the cost on, that we already share costs collectively with the 2 twice-a-year bulk pickups. So
Absolutely.
just putting that little control in there.
Yeah, and to your first point about customer service, yes, in fact, the motion that moved its way over to COG General Forum is that essentially the services for billing, payments, and customer services will be handled by Center County Refuse and Recycling. So that was struck from the Bergmeyer's contract and allocated then to CCRA, or CCRRA.
Yeah, but there was an option, so,
Yeah.
there was the base pickup, and then there were a bunch of options. And that was option 1 was billing. Their price was not competitive. Our other bidder didn't exactly split out their price very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the deal.
And that's a very unique feature with Bergmeyer, was they had that in the RFP because it was our understanding a lot of haulers are basically not including that or totally have outsourced that service now, so.
Yeah.
And the cost for service is relatively about the same across Pennsylvania. We saw that in executive committee today. I don't think we're gonna see as significant of an increase. It was said, some places in Pennsylvania are seeing increases in service of over 90%, but I don't think we're getting that.
The numbers, if I recall in the analysis, were at the higher end, so the larger cart and things like that, you're talking about a 33% increase. So again, it's like $7 or $8. Don't quote me on that, but 33% increase. Whereas if you go to the minimum side of the house, it's a 45% increase. But again, a couple dollars extra a month.
And to quote former Supervisor Miller, this last contract, the rates were like the equivalent of what he paid like 30 years prior. So, we've done good at keeping the costs down for quite some time.
And I don't know if anybody here was on the committee the last time, but you may remember the last bid, we bid both with and without carts, and the with carts was a significant number. So going this time around, the committee wanted the carts, they want to have some consistency. So that is also, ought to be something we consider in the increase, right? Is that we're asking them to purchase the carts to provide, so
Yeah.
that's part of the cost. Yeah.
All right, thank you. Okay, so
Interesting.
there's nothing else on climate? Okay. Then Public Safety Committee was canceled. Moved to Finance Committee with Matt.
Matt again? I don't know, can I get away with my report is included? If you have, no, I'm kidding. But again, I think it's important to call out the observations. So, a couple different things, sorry, make sure I'm on the right finance one here, yeah. Long story short, I think the code agency purchasing vehicles was something that I was, discussing, or I heard others asking questions about. There's a $71,000 in addition, there's a request from COG for an additional $71,000 to purchase vehicles, et cetera. Part of the discussion, which sadly was cut off due to time, was, well, what else could we do? Could you maybe just go ahead and essentially acquire the vehicles or put a down payment on the vehicles so they're held and not use the $71,000? So that was just a discussion item. But again, I would recommend that folks, take a look at the meeting to see all the specific exchanges that happened in that space across the different types of vehicles that they were considering, be them internal combustion, plug-in electric hybrids, et cetera. But I believe that's probably going to be moving forward for another, the ask of the $71,000, unless they decide to do something differently and not ask for that, which is up to the code office. So they had our input from it. That was about it.
Okay, anything else?
I think that's about it. One thing that I did find interesting, I will say this, is that it was noted that COG does not have a central purchasing function or a purchasing office. And yeah, I guess that was the first time I had heard that, and when I asked about it, it was interesting, the responses of, well, yeah, it'd be nice if we did, because I don't know. That was, again, that was kind of the impression there, but just wanted to confirm that they don't have a central purchasing, and I guess I can leave it at that and not, that's about that. That was what I had. Happy to talk about anything.
And I think that was part of the facilities committee original work, was to look, when they were inventorying. I'm looking at Patty because she was she was a founding member of that committee. So I think, that could have been something that was on their work task. So, but we'll get back to that. So I know Omari had his hand up for comments, questions.
Yeah, just the nuance, that 71,000 additional, that was for the codes department, which doesn't depend on municipality dollars. So it was more of they wanted $71 to go over their budget, which they had funding, they had dollars to do so. That's the nuance that I kind of understood to be out there. Like, they didn't need Ferguson to chip in another, $5,000 or $10,000, and so that's where I was concerned, and that was a lie. So I wanted to make sure everybody had that same knowledge and understanding.
Absolutely.
And I think that's great to think through purchasing, perhaps at a COG level, centralized purchasing that we all can use. More kind of consolidation of certain functions across the region. Over.
Anything else?
No, ma'am?
Anything else for finance? Yeah, that was going to be my comment on that. I think that was something tasked to the facilities committee when that was set up just a few years ago. This is a new committee, was part of their inventorying and efficiencies to look at some of that stuff. So I would assume it's on one of the work plans. So whether or not it got transferred to this year's work plan, I don't know, but I'd probably look back at that.
Thank you.
There's probably some shared resource needs among agencies over there, so that wouldn't hurt. I appreciated all the comments on the CIP and the format.
Yes,
I
thank
thought
you.
that
Any
was
questions?
good. I hope everybody had a chance to read that. I think my one comment would be, I think it is a good time to look at the format to tinker with, and now that there's a new finance director there. But I would just say to not get hung up on the changes, because this has happened since I've been on that committee, or even on every year there are changes to the CIP, and it really dominates the conversation.
Okay.
And so every new committee is going to want changes. So I would say lean on the finance director, who is going to be the consistent overseer of that, to determine what she thinks is going to be useful for right now, any changes. But I would, every year it's, either the budget or the CIP. How do we want to change the summary budget? How do we want to change the detailed budget? And a lot of time is expended on format. And it does eat up a lot of meeting time, and so I would say just be aware of that. And so just with the code vehicles, where is that going? Is that, because there was a note about maybe re-looking at if they all had to be electric, and so was that going to go back to climate maybe, or
No.
where was that going next?
That was going, I believe, out to general, was that for more discussion? I believe.
I did have a conversation with the code department lead, and he said that the building can't support electric vehicles, all electric. The load for that building maxed out, can't do anymore. And so the hybrid was the only option as far as vehicles that could be used on site.
Yeah.
So,
Right, and the hybrids being the 110 volts, you can just plug them in with some, drop cord or something like that.
Correct.
You don't want that, but yes, yeah.
they have something like a 50-mile max or some range, at least the ones they're looking at, and they drive, and I think he said the group drives 40 miles a day roughly. So they're looking at a couple tanks of gas a month maximum.
Yeah. And I will add to the part about, do they all have to be electric, et cetera? It was brought up, and the chair of finance essentially said, look, the previous chair may have said that, but nobody passed a ruling that said they had to be hybrid or electric, et cetera. So let's not take one person's statement as what now has to be done as gospel, was essentially the gist of it. So maybe you could intermix your internal combustions with the other ones. But the price of we'll say the hybrids, when compared to the internal combustions with the refunds right now, are essentially the same cost. But the question comes into what happens with the batteries after about 5 years. Does the cost to maintain these types of vehicles go up exponentially, as opposed to an internal combustion engine that could still, putz along for X amount of time? I don't know. So
Okay.
it's something to weigh in.
So I guess that was so was that question going back to?
There was no, it was
There
just
no
open
movement on
discussion
that, okay.
about that.
And
yeah.
then, so the vehicles is, well, I guess we can find out in the executive committee if that went to the general forum or if that's
Yeah.
coming back to facilities, so,
Yeah, it was really just discussion point, and
Okay.
then we're out of time.
oh, okay,
Okay.
okay. Interesting, okay. All right, any other questions for Matt on that? And if not, we'll go to Jeremy with executive.
I regret to inform you, I have nothing on electric vehicles, but we will be taking a look at the 2025 annual budget timeline at General Forum. That will be moving forward. And we did accept the refuse and recycling request for proposals, so that will also be moving forward to General Forum.
Okay. So I guess that remains a question, then maybe where does that
Yeah.
code vehicles issue move next? So questions for Jeremy on executive?
He's got it easy.
And if there isn't anything, Patty was going to tell us about the EMS legislative breakfast.
Yeah, so I attended that this year again, and it was an easier one this year. Last year it was pretty dire. The reports were not good, but with a change in the Medicare reimbursement, that has helped significantly. So it just sort of speaks to the importance of getting together with the county, state, and local electeds to work. They discussed the importance of so while we are pretty fortunate here in Center County with Center LifeLink responding, there is what I think they call it mutual aid. I don't know, Chief, you might know the right word. But so, we have to back up when the call goes into 911. We have to back up if they're not. So we could somehow be left behind. So it is important that Center LifeLink keeps a stable funding source. And they really encouraged everybody to have people join. The membership is a stable funding. And then also, there is still some things to be worked out, and it has to do with reimbursement, whether somebody is actually treated at their home or transported to the hospital. I mean, it really doesn't matter because they have to take the ambulance out, you know. So, but there is a different reimbursement based on what they call transporting to the hospital. And so these sort of discussions still need to be worked out. But it was great, Matt. I don't know if you have anything to add that you picked up on.
No, I mean, there were other legislatures, right? We had, Takic was there as well as Langerholz, so there was good representation and good questions being asked, I know afterwards, and everything, nice discussion, so. I think there's also an invitation from, I believe it was Kent from the Center Lifelink? Kent? Kent?
Enable.
Yes, yeah, to say, hey, anybody wants a tour, let us know. So maybe that's something we do. I'd be curious. So, yep, that would be all that I had to add.
Okay, well, maybe we can look into arranging a tour for that. Okay, I'll make a note.
Nice.
Great, okay. Anything else on that? Seeing nothing, we'll go to staff reports. If the manager had anything to report.
Thank you. So the attachment I see is not uploaded. We'll upload that. A few highlights, I'll just share that the PELRAS conference was held last week, March 13th through the 15th. PELRAS stands for the Public Employer Labor Relations Advisory Service Conference. It's held at the Penn Stater each year. We had actually quite a few staff members that were able to attend, understanding that we have a newly formed union in our Public Works Department. The focus is that in some of the classes that I attended, focused on Act 111 arbitration and ethics, as well as I think there was a session on the anatomy of the investigations. And so, again, it really focuses on labor relations. Other highlights include the continuation of negotiations and meetings with the county and the neighboring municipalities, including Patton Township, State College Borough, and Harris Township, for a negotiation for the Penn State impact fee, and an invitation will be extended to the chairs to meet with the managers as well as the chair of the commission's office, just to sit down and talk a little bit about next steps and what that process looks like per the executed agreement. And several other, internal activities. Oh, I'll also share with you, of course, the Strategic Management Planning Program, also referred to as the STAMP program. I convened a team including the finance director, Todd Grady, myself, the assistant township manager, and our finance consultant with Dahlwood. So we convened a meeting, reviewed the 6 proposals that the township received to the RFP that was submitted. We reviewed them, ranked them via scorecard, and then scheduled 4 interviews with the firms. And then, of course, as you see on the consent agenda, just to be above board, I wanted to be able to put that in the consent agenda should there be any questions. But ultimately, the board has already approved appropriations for this program. And of course, I've also shared in a previous meeting, but I'm happy to share again, the township received 50% match for this participation in the program. So $39,500 is the grant that was received from DCED for this program. And it will certainly serve as an opportunity for a deep dive of the management policies and better understanding of what processes and procedures might be evaluated to identify what direct, indirect costs look like for recommendation on a multi-year financial plan, and those recommendations get reported to the board. So there was all of that to share that the last 2 to 3 weeks we've invested quite a bit of time to identify what we believe to be the best firm to conduct this process. Those are the highlights, and at the next meeting, I'll have attached the written report along with the other future report to come, but those are some highlights to share, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Questions for the manager? Not seeing any. That's great. Very exciting about the STAMP program. We cannot wait to get that up and running and certainly see what the results are from that. So thanks for all that hard work. Yes.
Actually, because it was mentioned here that the STAMP program appears in the consent agenda, that is item H then, because the exhibit A that's noted in our agenda here for the consent agenda doesn't call out specifically or note that that is the STAMP essentially appropriation, et cetera. So, okay, just wanted to confirm that that's what that was. Okay, now I don't have to pull anything. Thank you.
Thank you. Super, okay.
Yeah, it looks like item H is missing from the outline, but is in the agenda as an attachment.
Oh, I have it in my
I have it in mind.
outline.
But
Okay.
Exhibit A specifically, that's called out in the contract? I didn't see
Wait.
that.
I'm in the wrong
And I
section.
can hold
I'm
this, but I
sorry.
just didn't, if we don't have to pull, we don't.
Well, yeah,
have to pull.
let's address it. So the,
Okay.
so this is the contract for services with Strategic Solutions, and that's for the STAMP program. So the question, right.
So I didn't include it. Once we execute the agreement, it is certainly a public available, but it's one of the 6 that we vetted and reviewed and scored, and then the contract is what's being provided to the Board of Supervisors.
thank you.
Okay.
All
And I
right.
can certainly circulate that in an email.
Thank you.
The contract's attached, but it's the Exhibit A referencing the proposal that was submitted to the request for proposals.
Yeah, that was my only question there.
Great.
So, okay, then we'll have to pull that one.
Great,
then.
great.
Thank you.
Okay. And then we have the Planning and Zoning Department report. Is there anything to ask about that? We can move to the Public Works Director's report. If you have anything you want to highlight from that?
Yeah, good evening. I have one item that is not in my report that I'd like to inform you. The township has sent out 2 communications regarding the spongy moth spraying program, and we have received a number of questions. They're all being fielded by the arborist.
Okay.
But I did not have that in the written report, just wanted to mention that. I can answer any other questions you may have in the report.
Great. Well, thanks for noting that. Questions for Mr. Modricker? I'm not seeing any. Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we will go to the Chief of Police report.
We have the police report attached, more than happy to answer any questions. One point of importance that several officers from the department were acknowledged by the Mount Nittany Help Sudden Cardiac Arrest Survivors and Heroes event. So this is where our officers assisted medical staff in cardiac arrests, and at the occasion, it was nice that lives that were saved, our officers were able to meet the survivor, as well as the family and grandkids, so on and so forth. So we posted numerous pictures on the Ferguson Township Police Facebook page. So it's always heartwarming, and it just shows you the level of service that our department's able to provide with defibrillators, oxygen, so on and so forth. And sometimes we're the first to arrive on the scene before ambulance, depending on location and all. So very proud of the officers and their efforts. So.
Thanks so much for highlighting that. Any other questions on that report?
I was,
Have any? Raise your hand. Yes.
yeah, just like crime summary, kind of, any trends that you're seeing just year to year, month to month?
A common theme is frauds, online scams, gift cards, so on and so forth. We try to advertise as much as possible, but that is a going thing. So you'll notice that for frauds, and again, most of the time it's computer scams and phone calls. So we do our best to investigate those. Sometimes the actors are outside the confines of the United States, and it becomes a little difficult. But we try to work with our federal partners when we can.
Thanks. And I've seen some of those announcements you make, sharing the information out to the public just to keep people mindful that, that these are things we need to be aware of.
And the grandparent scam, it appears as though a grandson, granddaughter is calling a grandparent. I was involved in an accident, I was arrested, I need bail, I need a tow truck. And, sometimes the individuals are not hearing, they just hear grandson, grandma, grandpa, and they're more than happy to, send money. It's the emotion, they're not just actually comprehending, so.
Yeah.
But, like I said, there are nefarious people out there, and we try to remind individuals, use caution, verify if you can.
And it's very convincing. I've heard stories
It
about
is.
people getting these calls, and these are vulnerable people often getting the calls, and they're very convincing and kind of aggressive sometimes. And so it's very easy,
Very much so.
very easy. And so thanks for all that public awareness. And yes, I know. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, definitely appreciate the service of those officers and their life-saving. And I have to say, Mr. Patterson and I, when we were on the tour of the station, you folks got the tools and the resources to handle anything that comes your way, even the UTVs. I think the detective there said they went like maybe a mile or so into a remote area of the township to get somebody to an ambulance. So it's just amazing what you have and what you do to both serve and protect our communities.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, well, thanks very much. And no unfinished business tonight, so we'll move to new business. And we have a number of items under the consent agenda. Did anyone need to remove anything for discussion? Looking, not seeing anything. And I'm going to ask the manager for protocol on member of the public commenting on consent agenda removal of items.
I think if the board wants to take action and hear from the public on this, on an item, I don't know that we have to adhere, nor should we. The board needs to take action, and then if you want to hear from a member in the audience, that would be appropriate.
And we have the solicitor here too, so I just don't know. I've never had it happen, so I'm just asking for a
It's really your
process.
prerogative in terms of the item. If you want to take the public comment and then decide if you want to pull that item from consent, you can, or you can approve it, but typically you would take public comment before you would act on something.
Okay, I'll look to the board for a preference.
I have no problem with public comment. It's going to be up to the board whether or not we want to pull
Yeah.
anything and go beyond that.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so if there's public comment on the consent agenda, if you want to come to the podium and provide your name and township of residence. And thank you for that.
Hi, Mark Thunder, Ferguson Township. Item H, the STEM contract. In looking at the agenda that was provided to the public, the contract does not have an Exhibit A attached to it, so there's no way that the public really knows what this contract is about.
So you were requesting that the board remove, this is item H, we're talking about the stamp program.
Well,
So-
until the public really knows what
But I'm just
this
clarifying.
contract
I'm just
is,
clarifying that that's-
it's hard to be able to comment on it from a public perspective.
Okay, all right, so thanks for that.
Thank you.
And I'll go back to the board if there is an interest in pulling that item, and ask someone to make a motion on that.
I would like to pull that item.
Okay, would you like to make that motion?
Uh,
Or you would
Madam
just like to pull
Chair,
that item? I guess we don't have to have a
I move that we approve
motion.
the consent agenda minus item H.
I will second.
Okay. So this is a motion to approve consent agenda items A through G minus H. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. So we will go to Omari. You've pulled the H. We'll move that now to our first item under new business.
Yeah, if we can just get a really brief summary of
Scope of
the
services.
scope of
Scope of-
That's what
services.
Exhibit A is.
That's what it,
Right.
so. if
Doesn't
you-
exist, and just a quick summary, if you could.
So provided with the agenda is a copy of the contract for services. And I'm not sure I'm asking, you're wanting to understand what Exhibit A is?
Minus Exhibit A, yes.
So Exhibit A is the request for proposal.
This?
It's the proposal that was submitted in response to the RFP. So if I put out their information prior to us confirming or executing an agreement, it becomes their methodology, their techniques. I'm putting everything out for the public consumption, which it becomes a concern as expressed by most vendors because of that competitive access.
Totally get it. That's why I was asking for a summary, like verbal summary, so folks understand that they've proposed, A, B, and C, not necessarily there's, was it sources and methods, but more of kind of the things that, hey, they were selected for kind of these following things. That's really, I think, kind of Or
Yeah,
was-
that's a great question. So their rates came in at a proposed cost estimate that meets the budgeted amount, so they fell within budget, and they met and responded to all of the items that were outlined in the request for proposal. And that had been provided to the Board of Supervisors in a previous meeting, the request for proposals, and I'm happy to send that to the board. And then, of course, after execution of the agreement, it's something that I can provide as a copy. And so this is an item that was approved as an appropriation in the budget, and this is an item that I wanted to put on the consent agenda just to ensure that the board could access and ask questions in terms of, you know, what it is that we're executing this agreement. Not necessarily something that I needed to put in front of the board for approval because the appropriation was already in the budget for the 2024 operating budget. But just to stay above board and just to keep everyone informed and be able to ask these questions, I certainly wanted to be able to do that. They came in with a competitive edge in various ways. There were some proposals that were over budget, and there were some proposals that did not, proposals that were reviewed that did not respond to a holistic deep dive and assessing some of the items that we listed in the RFP. For example, like looking at our personnel or organizational structure, looking at job descriptions and some of those items that we're looking to have, you know, identified as to how the township might be able to better streamline. I think I've shared with the Board of Supervisors that in 2022 there was a contract approved to do an organizational assessment with a focus on the administration, with a focus on the human resources, as well as the finance department. And that really yielded great recommendations on how the township could improve the operations. And this stamp program became available. Well, it's always been available, but I became aware of it and wanted to apply to receive funds to offset the cost to continue the organizational assessments that we've already started, but we're paying approximately $25,000 to have that service done. And so this became a program that became an opportunity to leverage funds from DCD program to do what we're looking to have done. And also at the time, there was interest from the board wanting to better understand how we could cut costs. And so having this type of a program, if you look at the Strategic Management Planning Program website, you'll see that this program initially, while introduced as a option for municipalities, it was targeted to distressed municipalities. And I think it was over the last 5 years or so, they've kind of restructured it, gave it a new name, and recognized that there's a benefit for all municipalities that are not considered distressed. In fact, municipalities with ours, for example, that have, I think our audit showed, you know, 10 million cash on hand, as well as like a diverse investment portfolio in the amount of approximately 9 million. We're certainly not considered distressed, and we don't want to, but as we're looking to streamline and really leverage opportunities to become more efficient and effective in our operations and meet, you know, the 21st century needs, and really work away from that paper-based workflow and leverage technology. Recognizing that these types of, you know, interviews with staff, review of job descriptions, looking at processes, looking at just our personnel policies, recognizing, for example, our PTO, our paid time off. One of the reasons we have that as an item that we want to have assessed for recommendations. Our paid time off policy is very generous. We have, I think for employees that have been here 15 years or more, they are provided 160 days, or excuse me, 160 hours. Thank you. Let me correct everyone here. Let me correct myself. 160 employees that have been here 15 years or more receive approximately 160 hours of vacation alone, and they are also able to carry over 160 hours of vacation alone. That's in addition to the 49 hours of personal time, and that's in addition to a day, which would be approximately 8 hours for each employee a month that is for sick time, with a cap of 960 hours. And when our personnel policy was adopted in 2008, that was certainly a great PTO program. And since then, you know, we've introduced a remote work policy. We've introduced 100% paid time off for 6 weeks for parental care. We've introduced 3 or 4 additional paid holidays where the township closes. And even for unions, while they are working, they are certainly still, you know, provided that time off through a vacation. And so this is just one example, right, where we recognize that we are going to need to make, to have an evaluation done, because when you think about the breakdown of our staffing, and again, I'm getting into the operations, which is generally not something that I want to invite the board to do because the charter is quite clear as to how operations are ran, but I can understand your desire here to want to identify what this program is going to do. And so one of the items in the request for proposal certainly was to talk about the methodology and the strategy as to how they would begin doing their assessments. And we anticipate this to be about a 6 to 9 month process. This is not going to be something that they look on our website, they look at our population, and then say, hey, here's our recommendations. They're going to come in and they're going to interview staff. They're going to look at our PTO. They're going to look at all of our personnel policies and be able to provide some recommendations because, again, that's just the beginning. Like, there's a whole breakdown of what our staffing is comprised of. About 35% of our staffing levels are with employees that are 15 years or more. 40%, about 45% of our employees have been hired within the last 5 years. And so when you think about the equity there, right? So if you have all that paid time off, you are entitled and rightfully have earned significant time to take off. And then you have your newer employees who are kind of picking up that workload distribution, and then we find ourselves, just last year we were in a situation where we needed to provide support to Public Works, and we really brought in a temp agency, and that's expensive, but it's recognizing that we're operating on a very lean capacity. And as your new manager in the last 2 years, like, I see all of this and I can understand how we got here, but really having kind of a third party come in and do an assessment that will help identify some policies, not just personnel policies, but policies, management policies that we might want to reconsider. Again, that's just one example. Another example was the work, how do we move from a paper-based workflow that actually can be quite expensive when we're not leveraging the technology that's available today, as well as present errors that we've had to mitigate. And as the board knows, we've suffered some consequences as a result of that. So a commitment that I made when I came in as your manager was to really focus in on this. And so I was very satisfied to hear and learn about this program. I was very excited to hear that we were awarded a 50% match, and I look forward to being able to carry this initiative out and be able to present the board with a report that'll have recommendations that I'm sure will validate or substantiate the need as to maybe the direction we might want to move toward.
I have a couple more comments, but I want to defer to others before I make any more. I've talked enough.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just, to recap a little bit of that. So the scope of services is what was presented to us that we've all reviewed in the RFP, and the funds are already allotted. And the language here referring to Exhibit A, this is the contract. So when the contract is executed, Exhibit A is included in there. So
yes.
Yes, so perfect.
And it'll be
Okay.
available.
Yes, thank you. Okay, we'll go down to this end if there was anything else.
No comments, it's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Greater information.
Yeah, thank you.
I guess my only comment is, if this were to be pulled tonight, is there any time constraints that we have for releasing the contract, et cetera, or delays that this could impose in not getting the grant money or the match?
I didn't look into that, so I don't have an answer for you. We executed, the chair would have signed the documents in December of last year when we were at the Sustainable and it's just been a process, to score the applications, to get the interviews, and so I haven't looked at the timeline for the release of funds to know what we're up against.
That was my question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Amar.
So, just bottom line, this is an awesome use of kind of finding other sources to combine with what we have to get kind of some solid potential outcomes. They may look at everything and say, hey, it's rosy compared to other organizations,
Yes,
but I
that's
suspect they're going to find something, that's actionable from an operations perspective, which I'm out of, right? So this is for you, ma'am. So this is great. And then just in understanding that at that Exhibit A, it was their proposal to you on kind of how they're going to get to the finish line, which included their budget, their kind of, sounds like they did their research to understand the organization, others more than other proposals. Sound like they kind of met all the measures of merits from the original RFP that kind of was presented last year. So, this just sounds like it's kind of in the wheelhouse, and you guys did your research to select the right organization. With that said, I move that we, accept Okay, so I move that we accept item H of the consent agenda, that was pulled from the agenda. Over.
If we can take a second, and then we can have discussion, and then we'll see if there's any other public input. I'm sorry, could you repeat your motion?
This is Patty, I'll second.
So you move to accept
Yes.
this item. Okay,
Item
thank
H.
you.
Yep.
And this is Patty, I'll second Patty.
Thanks. Further board discussion.
Can we maybe have a motion that says, you know, we accept this and we can reference Exhibit A from the November or December conversation so that the public is aware where they can find that information? I'm just wondering how we can go ahead and create some continuity between this and what was previously approved that we're calling Exhibit A.
Well, we are not calling it Exhibit A. That's in the contract, that it'll be attached. And so what we are saying is that that's what was requested in the RFP is what they're providing as their scope of service. So, but if you want to ask for a friendly amendment there to the motion to reference the RFP that was approved.
I'd rather not legislate the process for receipt, for documents being posted and being made public.
Yeah, I
I'd
would
rather
agree
kind
with that, yeah.
of accept what we have. If you're okay with it, just kind of what is there, accept it, let the manager go do the work that, you know,
Exactly, yeah.
and then, you know, if there's a right to know or some, whatever kind of process to get the documents that folks want to see, that kind of just go through that process.
So let me just chime in here quickly and say that, you know, the county does this on a routine basis, has a lot of RFPs. The RFP is approved by the commissioners. The responses are in, the same way you would do a request for bids, right? But you don't see that, right?
You don't see
Once you have approved the contract under our right to know, all of those bids, all of those responses are eligible for right to know. So the public could see everything, not just what's here. But it's only once you've entered into a contract that information can get released. So it's very common that your contract says, here's what we asked you to provide, these are the addendums, right? Here's what we asked for, here's what you provided, and that comes together. Right.
The consent agenda, I mean, that's well stated. Thank you, Betsy. It says contract award for CEF 2-7, you know, there's all other contracts here, and you won't see that contract in there. You'll just see a summarized version of it, a version of the detail.
Good?
Anything else?
No,
on
that was it.
Any other public comment?
I have nothing else, but there was a public.
Okay, and then I'll look, Centrise or Betsy, anything before we go to public comment? No, okay. Public comment, if there is any, please make your way up to the podium and provide your name and township of residence.
Mark Kunkel, Ferguson Township. The board has approved the RFP. The RFP was posted on the township's website. Roman numeral 5 of the RFP talks about a support team. Indicates that the consultant will be expected to work with a consortium of individuals representing the township's management, elected officials, and any community members appointed by the governing body. So I would request that the board consider a working group of citizens from the township to be part of the process, since it is part of the RFP and a contractual relationship is being made with the consultant.
Thank
So
you.
would you consider that?
Well, not at this time. I don't think we'll discuss that at this moment, but I'll look to,
When would be appropriate time to ask for that?
So as part of this, the letters of support that were submitted, I'll note that part of what we're looking to put together is an ad hoc committee, and we will have various people be part of that. They'll be kind of a sounding board. They'll certainly serve as someone that the consultant can work with, and so staff has already kind of identified for that process.
Will that be an open process for residents to apply to the board? Because it says that the board will make that appointment.
So the
I mean-
board will also be meeting with this firm and be working through them. So I will happily provide the board with an update at a future meeting with that process.
yeah, and I'm comfortable with that. I mean, this is part of the process. If that's in the RFP, then we'll be working through that, so I'm comfortable with that.
So there will be an
That's
open
definitely-
process for you to select members of the public to be part of this consortium?
There will be a process to appoint people to the ad hoc committee, yes. Now, what determines, I assume the board will determine who all will make up the full complement of this ad hoc committee, so.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Was there somebody else online? No, okay.
No comment online.
Anything else? Okay, so we had a motion to approve the contract for services with Strategic Solutions. We had a second. Any other discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. Okay, we'll move to a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing application submittal to Department of Conservation and Natural Resources for grant funding for the suburban park playground installation. And I think we'll go to the manager for this item.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, so the township is putting forth a application submittal to DCNR for essentially what will be facilitated as what we call a C2P2, community conservation partnership, and we are looking for grant funding to support a Kaboom project, and Kaboom is a nonprofit agency that works with municipalities within the Commonwealth to put to bring together community residents to install a playground. And the whole idea is that there's a huge campaign and a lot of awareness about playground and, you know, a sense of belonging and playground, like equity and play spaces. And we're looking at tentatively the suburban park, as we all are aware that phase 1 is currently being constructed, and next steps will be to consider the playground installation. The Kaboom project is also being hosted by the Borough of Lock Haven this year, and the Kaboom nonprofit agency works closely with the Pennsylvania Municipal League for again, raising awareness about playground or equity, and then also really looking for the community members to come out and help install the playground. They do also coordinate to have a certified installer, but the whole idea is that it's, community coming together to install a playground, and it's celebrated, and a lot of good campaign messaging gets done pre and post event. We had this done maybe 10 years ago at the State College Borough, and the product of that can be seen at Orchard Park. And the board this evening is provided with the agenda is a recommended motion to adopt the resolution.
All right, thank you. And this is a public hearing, so I will first open the public hearing for comments on this item. And seeing none, I will close the public hearing and ask for a motion.
Madam Chair, this is Omar. I move to adopt the resolution.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any discussion?
Oh, I just think it's such a great idea. It sounds super fun.
Yeah.
Matching funds, community engagement, inclusion, belonging, these are all magic words to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks very much to staff for pursuing this and putting this in front of the board. That's great. Okay, if there's no other discussion, this is a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Resolution 2024-11. Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Mr. Patterson?
Yes.
Mr. Heller?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes,
Madam Chair, resolution passes unanimously.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to discussion on Chapter 19, Signs and Billboards, Section 19-108, Temporary Sign Standards, and we'll go back to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda is a brief narrative provided in written form. The short version is that the township received a communication representing a party that had concerns that the freedom of speech was being violated through the sign ordinance, and the township referred for the solicitor's review and consideration. And at this time, the board is, encouraged to consider if you would like to have the sign ordinance, I believe it's section 19108, temporary or sign standards, be referred to the planning commission as part of what's already on their existing work plan, which is to review the sign ordinance as it particularly relates to the village of Pine Grove Mills, but now also include this matter as well. So they're kind of just doing a swoop of addressing both issues, and then bringing back to the board recommendations for improvements for your consideration.
Thank you. And I'll ask the solicitor if you have any comments before I go to the board. Nothing to add on that.
It's pretty clear to me that this section was not changed the last go-around. There were some edits. I think most of the edits in the 2020 version related to the decision on commercial signage. And one of the recommendations that I made to the manager was that we look at what other surrounding municipalities are doing with their sign ordinance in terms of this issue, because it is not specific. I know the letter directed us to political signs, but this is all temporary signs. And so one of the concerns that I would have is we make a caveat for one section, then we're going to get back into the commercial speech argument, which is that you're back to more than that. And I'm not saying we shouldn't do that, and I certainly understand the issue, but I think that you want to have a thorough review of this, and the Planning Commission is probably the right place to do that, to look at all of that and make some comparison and analysis.
Thanks very much. And we can start over here. Have any thoughts?
No?
Yeah, I agreed with the suggestion of putting it back to the Planning Commission. It's already on their work plan, and so just adding this element into that. Anything?
I'm good moving this over to the
Yeah.
planning commission. I would definitely encourage the public to collaborate with the planning commission, understanding not just temporary signs, but hearing, various unique sign needs within the township. I think it's helpful to have a dialogue to craft this ordinance in a way that will help businesses succeed, and for those that want to freely express their views and opinions to do so in a way that, just works.
Yeah. Thank you. Anything over here?
My only comments are, I think this is kind of the Pandora's box, and maybe just the solicitor's comments. As we evaluate this one side of it, then where are the shadows on the other side that are going to be, where the rocks that are going to be turned over there, et cetera, and then evaluated and further discussed. I don't want to voice, the Planning Commission will come up with their own recommendation, but because this calls into the First Amendment, political speech, and everything else, I, of course, do not want to stifle any political speech, First Amendment issues, et cetera. I want to make sure that folks, that I'm very clear on that. I am curious to see what the Planning Commission do, and I'm also wondering, just as a citizen, does this just need to go through litigation so that there is an argument at some point in the future to say one way or the other? And is that ultimately where this is going to end up? And that's just me trying to understand what could potentially happen here, because I think litigation might be the only way to actually arrive to a foundational answer. So time will tell, I guess, are my thoughts there. That's all.
Amari?
I won't bite.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just share, we did update the sign ordinance to comply with the requirements for content neutrality in our sign ordinance, as everyone's aware. And so that was updated, and there was a deep look at the sign ordinance at that time. And so I think referring it back to the Planning Commission, a number of those Planning Commission members will be familiar with that overview, and I think this fits in with their scope of work for this year. So, yeah. So I would look for a motion then to direct this back to the Planning
I
Commission.
do just want to share, Madam Chair, so while we do hope that this will be resolved in the near future, I'll just acknowledge that with the upcoming election, our ordinance enforcement officer will be directed not to enforce this particular section of the sign ordinance until we have resolved this matter.
Which is what we did in the fall.
Exactly, so it's really just a continuation of that standard. And so I appreciate that clarification.
And if I may, with the continuation of that standard, how will that be communicated to folks so they are aware that it is suspended, so that it is equitable and known?
It was posted on the website.
It'll be posted on the website, and I can certainly reach out to the county and have them generate a report for campaign notices and just notify the parties accordingly, as that was done last year.
Fantastic.
And that's only on the quantity of signs. They can't necessarily put a sign in the right of way or anywhere that's gonna create a safety hazard.
We're not changing any of those, we're just looking at the quantity of signs
Okay.
on a private property. Or on
The number
on-
3 is suspended,
Yes.
Correct.
period.
On private property.
With that said, Madam Chair, I move to direct the planning commission to include this matter in their review of the sign ordinance.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. So we'll move to a discussion on a donation request by the Valley Community Business Alliance in the amount of $2,500. And back to the manager.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda is a brief narrative. I'll just expand on that a little bit. So there was initially, I believe it was in 2020 or 2021, the former manager had worked to really support what I will call, wonderful group of volunteers within Ferguson Township who really wanted to mobilize and kick into action a new grassroots initiative now known as Route 45 Getaways. And then it was always brought to the board for a consideration of an appropriation in the amount of somewhere between $7,000 and $7,500. And it was always presented with an expectation that this was a shared partnership between Harris Township, Ferguson Township, as well as the borough of Millheim. And so Ferguson Township facilitated this for, I believe, maybe 2 years, and then, extended an opportunity to the borough of Millheim to facilitate the management of that program. And then it's my understanding that one of the elected officials at Millheim Borough, talked with the Valley Community Business Alliance and really worked with them to form a partnership, and really now has, watched this new nonprofit facilitate the Route 45 Getaways. But still, the position here is that we would, I recommend that the board consider appropriating the requested amount to still support the economic development that is, experienced as part of the Route 45 Getaways event that's held. It's a week-long event that's held generally in the summertime. And it certainly, there's a whole website. A lot of great work has been put into this initiative and continues to impact positively businesses beginning in Pine Grove Mills and extending all the way into 45 down to Millheim. So happy to answer any questions. I would just note that there's a recommended motion to authorize appropriations to support this donation request, and this would come from the account that supports economic development.
All right, thank you. We can start on this end. Any questions? Or?
Yeah, just one. So it mentioned that there's a match of $10,000 from Happy Valley Adventure Bureau. Are we one of the 4 contributing $2,500, and so therefore there's $20,000 total that are going to be in this bucket?
I believe that is correct, but
Okay.
I can't verify that because
Okay.
I'm not sure of who else is contributing for that donation or for that required match.
Copy that. And then I took a look at the Route 45 Gateway kind of site. I hadn't heard of it, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
So really neat thing that I'm going to do this summer.
It is great.
I noticed that the cidery, which is
Yeah,
right there,
cidery.
is not on there. So is there something that we could do? I go there enough to go talk to them and say, hey, you guys might want to look into this website and get signed up, but is there something that we do that we can send to the businesses? It wasn't on there on the 2023 list or something.
Because I think they've done it, so maybe we need to, maybe we need to
Okay.
look
They do.
So
at
they did?
that. But
Okay.
I think that's a great point
Yeah,
about.
that's a great point. Yeah, they
the
had
outreach we can
previously
do.
participated. Maybe last year they didn't, and I
Okay.
don't know why.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of great businesses are recognized and marketed as part of this event.
Yeah, but good point. Thanks for mentioning that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I just want to say I support it. I mean, living on Route 45, it's always good to see the signs out and go, oh, hey, so there's somebody else that's, contributing and, really supporting the community and also, of course, economic development, et cetera. So I like seeing this. Thank you.
Any other comments down here? It's great to hear that group is willing to take on the initiative, so that's, that was good. And, all right, if there's nothing else, I will look for a motion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors authorize the donation request in the amount of $2,500.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. And any communications to the board to share? You can start over here.
I had received a communication from I think it was from two groups representing residents in a particular housing development in the township, just had some concerns with rent increases in excess of $250 a month in their new leases, so.
None.
Nothing to share. Anything care to share?
I was again contacted about the broken stormwater pipe leading from 2645 and under the private alley.
All right, anything to share?
Yes, there's members of the Baha'i faith in Ferguson Township that are, I guess, in kind of a Ramadan-esque period right now. So just want to acknowledge those individuals I lost all of the words associated with this time period, and just want to acknowledge those folks, because I think we've acknowledged a lot of other faiths, so I just want to throw that out there for the Baha'is of Ferguson Township. And then also I mentioned earlier about some communications on workforce housing, so that continues to get some traction around folks
Thank you.
wanting that to come to bear.
And I did want to mention that for the DEI calendar, there is a form, I think it's a form that anyone could submit to have something included on that so that it's recognized along with the other dates. So if you want to share that with whoever could fill that in. I had a number of communications, and I just wanted to point out a couple. One was a concern about drivers turning right on red from Circleville leading out of Greenbrier Saybrook onto Science Park Road. There were some, it looked like potential conflicts there with pedestrians or bikes, so I think that was noted to me. And then I did also receive that letter from the tenants, and I'll respond on our behalf, so I appreciate that. So, all right, anything else? Okay, and there were a number of calendar items listed there that can also be found on our website calendar. And if there is nothing else, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I will second, and we're adjourned.
Dave
All right, thanks,
Munter, look at
everyone.
that time.
Happy to.